Welcome to the Disruptors Creed podcast. I'm shocked you're here. I'm Kristen Zeman, and this is the place where we challenge the status quo, crush comfort zones, and disrupt the patterns that keep us stuck. Today's episode is all about decision making, and not the neat bullet point kind. I'm talking about the messy, gut-wrenching, soul-whispering choices that shape your life. We've all been there, spinning in circles, making pro-con lists, asking for advice, hoping someone will just tell us what to do. But here's the truth. No one can choose your life for you. In this episode, we're going to dismantle the myths around decision making. Chris and I are diving into the psychology, the emotion, the fear, and even the coin toss that might reveal more truth than all of your logic combined. So whether you're facing a career move, a relationship shift, or just trying to stop making the same bad decision on repeat, this conversation is going to call you out and call you forward. Because clarity doesn't come from overthinking. It comes from action. And disruptors don't wait for certainty. We decide and we grow into it. Now, let's get into it. Hi, Chrissy. Happy podcast day.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm good. Hello, disruptors. I'm here with my intern, Chris, on this beautiful Sunday. And how you feeling today, Chris?
Well, I'm a little tired. How are you?
I know why you're tired, because we broke our rule.
We
have a
broke our
rule.
rule.
We have a rule. We go to bed early because I am all about vitality and longevity. And I know that sleep is a superpower and you need to go to bed because nothing good happens past 9:45. And last night, on this beautiful Saturday night, we had lovely humans in our home. We hosted a dinner party. And I'm going to tell you, I completely lost track of time. I thought it was 9 o'clock.
It was such great conversation that at one point I did notice that it was like 9:30 and one of our friends made a comment and he said, "I'm going to open another bottle of wine." And I said, "You're not opening anything. Like we're
Yeah.
done. We're done drinking," because I saw it was 9:30, so I'm like, "Great conversation, but we'll wrap it up in the next 20 minutes and we'll be in bed by 10 like we are supposed to be."
Yes. And I wasn't even drinking. I was drinking Topo Chico all night last night because I wanted to feel vibrant today. But the funniest thing happened. Again, I didn't know what time it was, but you said in the middle, I think there was the middle of a conversation, you said, "Okay, everyone get out of my house." And I looked at my watch and it was 10:30. And I was so grateful for that, for you kicking everyone out. Not because I wanted anyone to leave, but because I think we were all tired, but we just kept talking. It was just the best conversation. I laughed so hard. And so I'm going to tell you, it was worth it. You know, sometimes it's worth it just to stay up too late and to make memories and to have wonderful connections with your tribe. So that was so much fun. But I'm a little tired. I'm not firing on all my cylinders today.
Well, and I think that, we broke our rule twice. I mean, Friday was a rough day
Yeah,
as
I got
well.
sunburned.
Not that we stayed out late, but I chose to day drink, which I haven't done in a long time, and I definitely overserved myself. So in the sun all day. So Saturday was I don't we were getting ready for the dinner party, and I said to you, the only problem I have with anyone coming over is that I have to put a bra on.
That's right.
Because
And
I was so tired that was the
I
one
felt
thing
that.
I couldn't
know.
I could not bear the thought of having to do that.
Listen, what is listeners, disruptors of the female persuasion? Does that not just resonate into your soul? The fact that, like, if you have to put a bra on, what is the equivalent of that for men? Do you guys like? I don't know. Is it your tidy whities where you're just like, gosh, I can't wait to just get into my boxers? And I don't know, but I felt that, and I'm actually surprised that you aren't chastising me for what I did to you during the day yesterday, because
Oh my God,
you
no, listen, I have a bone to pick with you. Now that you just, so okay, first of all, let's be honest, I never get sick when I drink. I don't get hungover.
yeah
I mean, like in my 53 years, I can maybe count on one hand the amount of times I have not felt well the next morning. And this particular night, I think I'm not at all denying that it was alcohol related, because alcohol, I'm sure, had something to do with it, but it was also being outside at the beach at 95-degree weather all day. And I thought, why drink water when I can drink tequila? So
Excellent
obviously
choice.
I didn't have a great Friday night, but so Saturday I was barely hanging on by a
That's
thread.
right.
Like, it took everything I had to just brush my teeth in the morning. And so we're sitting in the living room, and we're watching this show that we really wanted to finish. And you
But
said,
hold on. Let me also say, this is also going to make me sound like a psychopath, and I don't care, but I don't like watching television during the day. I
"We don't
believe,
watch TV during the
okay,
day.
well,
We don't." Well, you
yeah,
don't.
I'm not gonna, I was gonna say, I'm not gonna let you have that
Yeah,
because
I definitely do. After my work is done, I absolutely will watch TV while I'm having lunch, and
so,
yeah.
in fact, we talked about this, I don't know, a podcast ago when we talked about managing our time. And I reward myself at the end of the day after I have done all of the things, hit all the buckets of the things I'm trying to accomplish, align the values. So yesterday was a rough day
Well, hold on a
and
minute. I
I
just
wasn't
want to
going to
point
let you
out
have
that
it. I wasn't going to
you're
let
right.
you.
You're right. But I want to point out that I am an overachiever. It takes you all day to to check off your bucket list, your bucket, your items. I get it done by, noon, 1 o'clock. So
That's
I'm
right.
just, if I
Pickleball,
want to,
check. Wordle, check.
hey,
Bake a loaf of bread, check. I know you do. I know you do. I know.
grade the papers from my students from school, check. I get everything done in the morning. So by 1 o'clock, when I sit down, I'm done for the day. But and usually there's a grocery shopping in there too. So, you can make all the jokes you want, girl, but I get moved, because the minute I get up, also what we talked about in the last podcast, the minute I get up, I get moving. I don't sit around for an hour drinking coffee and,
Is
doing,
that what I do?
doing,
Is
well,
that what I
no.
do? Is
Damn
that
it.
what
Then
I
I
do?
have something you
I'm like,
write.
gosh, I'm not going to let you lie on this podcast. I don't watch TV. And then to say that I sit around and drink coffee,
Do
what?
you do you not do you not spend an hour in the morning, you drink your element, then you have coffee while you're writing?
Kind of left out the most important part of the thing I do. But okay. Anyway, yesterday
It's neither here nor there.
you were trying to watch TV all day and I said, I'll tell you
I
what.
walked to the mailbox in the morning. That was
Okay,
rough.
you did. You did. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, let's earn some TV because I wasn't feeling all that great either. And I said, let's earn some TV. So you helped me drag the Peloton out into the living room and we got the walking pad on. I said, we are only allowed to watch television if we move. So it worked out great. I felt so much better.
Sure,
I
for
rode that
you, but
Peloton for an
why
hour
should
and a
I be
half
punished? Why
because
should
we
I
just
be
needed to
punished?
move.
Because
You needed to move. We both
you
needed
know
to move.
you needed to move. I needed to lay down
Yeah. You know
and
what
just
this sort
watch
of
TV.
leads into? Bad decision making, don't you think? The decisions that we made on Friday, especially involving tequila, but that caused the Saturday to be that way. We need to talk about decision making. Look how I just teed that up for our next topic.
Yeah, I would definitely say that, and this is one of those things that usually I've made plenty of bad decisions, and they usually don't haunt me. But this is one that this is gonna stick in my head for a little bit. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I didn't
won't
feel
be
good either.
doing that anymore.
Yeah.
I won't do what I did to myself, because I'm not a fan.
Yeah, it's so funny because we've figured that out. I don't drink hardly, but when I do, I feel like crap the next day. And so then I have to
Yeah.
keep relearning the lesson. Bad choices, just stupid choices, and
Yeah.
especially because it really does get in the way of what I'm trying to achieve. And I hate feeling like garbage, and I always feel like garbage.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I usually don't feel like garbage, but I really did. So I'm kind of on the now. I did have a little bit of wine last night at the end of the night with dinner, but nothing like I normally do. Like, I'll usually have, 3 or 4 glasses when these friends come over, and I had a little bit of each bottle just to take a taste, and that was really all my stomach could handle.
Yeah, and my favorite thing to do is drink wine with these people because one of them especially is so well versed in wine and
Yeah.
writes a blog about it, and yeah, he's just lovely on all facets.
And
But
you know what I also found? It was that the people we had over last night, like, every person at the table was a good storyteller. Like,
my face still hurts from laughing
like
so hard.
it's such an art to be able to truly tell a story. Now, I did at one point, you were telling a story, and I looked at you and I was like, can you bundle it?
Bundle it. Yeah.
Because sometimes you tell
Well,
long stories.
Well, if you recall, one of our attendees of our dinner party enjoyed she said, wow, I felt like I was there when you were telling the story. And that was when you told me to bundle it. But I have a flair for the dramatic and I like to be very detailed and colored in my storytelling. So you didn't like it, but they did. And I'm putting more credence in them.
I just lived it with you.
You've
So
already heard the story. You know the
yeah,
story. So
but
you
I
were
I
like,
do
bundle it.
like
Yeah.
last night just reminded me how important it is to surround yourself with interesting people. Like it was so the storytelling was great, the conversation was great. It
Hmm.
was all relevant. Like we touched on a little bit of everything, which I loved.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it really made me think. And by
Hmm.
when I left there, when I kicked
You
everybody
mean when
out,
you kicked everyone out? Yeah,
when
when
I
you
kicked
left.
everyone out, I had a good book recommendation. So I
Yeah.
downloaded a new book to listen to. So like I love that. I love when people challenge the way we think about things and just we see things in so many different perspectives. So I
Yeah.
thought it was just all in all, it was really a great night.
In short, worth staying up too late for those humans, all of
Yes.
them. So that's great because that's also in alignment with our human connection bucket, building more community. So sometimes, you gotta, I don't know, rob one bucket to fill the other. So
Yeah. So
that's okay.
it
That's
was
okay.
worth the decision making
Yeah.
process of
Yes.
staying up past 10 o'clock last night.
Yeah, yeah, not something that we'll do all that often. But so, yeah, that leads us into the topic of this week, and that is decision making in general. And I started contemplating this because, as in most things, I love and adore all of our children. And this one made us especially me, think about decision making. And this has probably happened to you listeners where someone comes to you for advice. They say, I'm in this dilemma. I'm trying to make this decision in my life. And they tell you what they're grappling with. And in this case, our daughter came to us and she was kind of at a crossroads and making a big decision in her career. And she asked you and I to weigh in on it. I love it when our kids do this because you and I often have different perspectives on things. So they're able to get, kind of a spectrum of how we think and feel. But on this particular one, you and I were in lockstep. We were like the ancient philosophers. After she told us what the dilemma was, we were like, Bailey, this is what you have to do. You always, pick security and stability over uncertainty. And you and I were like just doling out this advice. And we both get done speaking. And Bailey says to us, okay, as you guys were speaking, I wanted to fight you both so much. And I started coming up with, my defense of why I disagree with you. And she said, and so basically, after listening to both of you, I realized exactly what I want to do. And it's the opposite of what you said. And I laughed so hard. I was like, well, thanks, I guess, that we helped you, even though you hated our advice. But it started me thinking. It's this visceral reaction that we get, which I will call it what it is. It's intuition. You know what you want to do. And I think it's a really great thing to seek out advice, but you have to pay attention to that feeling that starts emanating, call it whatever you want, the universe or whatever magnet that is pulling you. But in that moment, she realized what you're telling me I should want sounds great. It's pragmatic, but it's not what I want. And sometimes making decisions for yourself is listening to others and doing the opposite of what they say because of what it evokes inside you.
Yeah, so it's funny because Bailey has always been a contrarian to everything. And I love it. I love the challenge that now, and I did not like it when she was a teenager, but I do love it. I do love having those conversations with her now because I know she's 98.9% of the time she's going to go exact opposite of what the way we think. But what I love about that is that it really challenges my view of things
Hmm.
because you go with safety and security, you go with what you know because we know we're at the other end of it where we went through those jobs, we have our pensions, we have our things, and now we can really live the life we want, and we want our children to have the same thing. But then they're showing me why I can be happier this way. And I have to I had to really change my perspective of like, okay, now I'm still always going to be in the camp of don't jump without a net, because I don't think anyone should jump without a net, especially with how unstable the world is and the job market. Like you have to be able to pay your bills because I can't pick up the tab for you. But I love her thought process and the way it challenges my own thought process. And I see things differently after having a conversation. We might not always agree, but I can see where she's coming from and it really I like it.
But for me, this isn't even about that. This is about why we ask for advice when we already know the answer. And we do that a lot. We know what we want to do. And then, we seek out those people who will tell us exactly the thing that we want to do. And that's why it's really important to invite the truth tellers into your life, to say, to your people, tell me the truth. Don't tell me what I want to hear. But I think what's more important there is the clarity that you're chasing is sometimes in the advice you reject. And that's what
Yeah.
happened with her. We gave her this advice that we thought was so sound. And she literally said, my gosh, this whole time you were talking, it just made me realize I'm going to do the
I
opposite.
hated everything you said.
Yes. And you know what it made me think of? And I think this is so ridiculous, but think about a major decision that you need to make in your life. Actually, big or small, doesn't matter. And to me, it's the coin toss revelation. And I love the idea of this. If you genuinely don't know what you want to do in a certain situation, you don't know what path you want to take, flip a coin. Tails is one thing and heads is the other. And while that coin is in midair, you will in a split second hope for one side to fall over the other. And in that moment, because it's so fast, that's your intuition, is when you secretly want the heads to fall, And so try that little coin toss. And, I think in the millisecond the coin is in the air, your truth just rises up.
I love that test better. You've always been like a big pro con list. You've taught our kids to write pro con lists. I don't write a pro con list for the reason that I can have 75 cons, but the one pro is so emotionally based that
Yeah.
I'm going to pick the pro
Yeah.
because it just carries a heavier weight than all of the other things. So that's why I really love the coin toss because in that empty moment my gut tells me what I'm wishing for, and that
Yeah.
tells me what I want. And I
Yeah.
think that's better than a pro con list because you're not trying to weigh all these different factors that they all carry different levels of weight. So I
Yeah.
don't think that they match as well.
That's exactly right. I think a pro and con list is pretty cool as a visual because you can mark up this list and you've got your columns. This is a major life decision that you're about to make, something that you're about to embark upon. And it's a great visual as you sit down. And I think it's a useful tool to write out all of the positive things about that and all of the negatives. Let's use a personal example in our lives. When I applied to be the superintendent for Chicago Police Department, that was a really interesting moment in my life because I never would have had the confidence to apply for that position had someone not reached out to me from the Chicago Police Board asking if I was interested. I genuinely had that imposter syndrome moment. And then when I made the pro and con list, I thought, okay, I did the whole what's the worst thing that could happen? And what's so interesting about that particular scenario is the worst thing that could happen is simply I don't get the job, right? I still had a job, so there was no threat to security or stability. But when I wrote that pro con list, and you remember this, I did it in my office on that chalkboard, and the pro list was, man, it was pretty short because it would require you commuting. You would have to reverse commute because you were still a police officer in Aurora. The con list was so big in that I had never run a police department that big. Failure was looming, and that was a question I wrote on there is what if I fail? It's highly political. And Lori Lightfoot was the mayor at the time trying to navigate, all the challenges of the Chicago Police Department. You name it. I didn't know anyone. That could also be a pro because I thought, all right, I don't have any relationships. I don't know anyone. But then the con side of that is, I'd have to learn competencies. But this con list was so so long. And on the pro side, it was, but man, I want to die trying. Even if I know that failure is a possibility, I wanted that job. And that was it, even though the list was so much longer. So you bring up a really great point that it's not about the volume. It's not about the number that exceeds one side or the other. It's the weight. Despite all of the cons, the weighted was, I love the city of Chicago, and I would absolutely love to be at the helm of that police department and just give it my very best, knowing that I probably would fail. Now, we know how that story turns out. I didn't get the job.
You're right, but I think that when I wrote my list for you putting in for that job, what's the worst thing that could happen was you getting the job.
That's right. Yeah.
Because I
And
thought
mine was not getting the job.
right, and because the emotional tax of what that would do to you
Yeah.
and
Which you would
not
have to
having
endure.
any freedom, and but it's still, what's important is that you're able to sit down and write this list and take a look at it, and you're right, the cons were so much longer and the one pro outweighed them all. So that's
Yeah.
why I love the thing we've learned with, what's the worst thing that can happen, and
Yeah.
then can I deal with the worst thing that happens, and if I can, I'm going to move forward, and then I love that you added, what's the best thing that can happen?
Mhm.
Because I never thought about it that way before. I was like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, at work every day, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, I could get killed. I could not come home. All right, well, that's part of the job. I proceeded and went to work every day. But what's the best thing that could happen? And then focus all of your energy on the best thing that can happen. And work becomes a joy. The things that
Yeah.
I picked to do became pleasant. Like, I loved being there every day because the best thing that could happen, that's where I focused all my time and energy and made those outcomes.
And what that exercise does, it allows you to make peace with the worst thing that could possibly happen. And you know what's so funny is the worst thing that could possibly happen rarely ever happens. But if by the off chance it does, then you've already made peace with it and you've decided to proceed. And then the focus, as you said, lies on just drilling down to the best thing. Because for us humans, it's getting through the transition of change that is the hardest. How many times have we gone through something, everyone, every single one of us, something so challenging in our lives, traumatic even. And when you're going through it, man, it sucks. There's no other way to describe it. It's like going through a storm, darkness. But then, when the light emerges, and by the way, the only way to get to the other side is to go through it. And once we finally do, we say, was worth it. I'm on the other side. So that's why we have to focus on that. In that particular scenario, it was as if the universe was looking out for me for Chicago, because that was early 2020 and I made it to the final three. I did not get the job. She chose someone else. And then the pandemic hit. And that was a nightmare, especially in the city of Chicago. And then George Floyd was killed, and that sent civil unrest. And Chicago was an absolute nightmare because there was most certainly a push and pull between the police department and the mayor and the politics. So I quite frankly dodged a bullet by not getting that job. So the universe was looking out for me. So, we also can look at some of the things we didn't get in our lives and go, okay, what was that trying to teach me? What did I learn from that? And I'm grateful for having gone through that process. I absolutely learned a lot through that process. I grew through the process. And at the end of the day, worst thing that could happen, I didn't get the job, and I'm, still okay. In fact, it worked out for the better. But, I think, not all things are weighted equally, and one true desire can drown out 20 logical cons. And that's exactly what happened in that situation.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that when I look back over my life, right, it's that Garth Brooks song, Unanswered Prayers, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I'm so thankful because when I look back for the things that I thought I really, really wanted,
Hmm.
and now fast forward in my life, I'm so glad I didn't get them. I'm
Yeah.
so glad it didn't work out the way that I wanted it to in that moment, because there was something better waiting for me. And I look at how the scariest part was in the middle.
Hmm.
I transitioned from, the job I had before into becoming a police officer. I was 28 years old. I wasn't 17 like you. It wasn't something I grew up with my whole life. It was something that I really wanted since I was younger. I just was I didn't do it because of different reasons. But when I transitioned, like that was a giant jump to go from a, a regular job with regular hours, working 8 to 4, being a single parent with 2 kids at home, to moving into law enforcement where it was so uncertain and different shifts and different working hours. And I was terrified in that transition. Could I do it?
Mhm.
And then once I got through it and made it through like my FTO program and finally was on my own, I stopped being so afraid because I was in it and now I knew I was going to be okay. And I just had to learn how to rearrange schedules. But it was that scary moment where I took the test and got offered the job. I was terrified before I said yes to taking it because I didn't know what it would turn my life into.
Mhm. Sure. We encounter those kinds of decisions every single day in our lives, whether they be big or small. We're making decision after decision. I had Greg Scheinman on this podcast, and, he calls them better one or better two, and this is apropos in all areas of your life. What decisions are you making? Just pick the better one in the moment. And when you're talking about a career, you're looking at a major decision. When you're talking about a relationship, starting one or leaving one, these are major decisions. So, you have to sit with those, make the pro con list, go through that exercise, but truly feel what your heart is telling you, despite one column being longer than the other. Well, here's what I also want to talk about is that we are going to make bad decisions, every single one of us. Well, we just talked about the bad decisions that we made on Friday that made us feel bad on Saturday. Now, I'm going to be a little harsh here and say I am absolutely remedial when it comes to this, because I know I was so mad on Saturday morning and I'm like, I hate feeling like this. Why do I do this? I just make bad decisions. We need to also look at the cycle of bad decisions. And so if every outcome in your life sucks, then guess what? It's probably your fault. And I'm going to double down on this. I'm going to double down on this because we're allowed to make decisions. It's a crossroads. You make your pro and con list. You do the best you can with what you have. But we also need to show some introspection after we make those decisions to assess them and to say, okay, was that decision a good one or a bad one? Right. And then we course correct. So if we start to notice a pattern, and let's just use an example of people who continually pick bad people to have a relationship with, the people who are, it's just not healthy. Like, you can look at this and go, you keep picking the same type of person and you're literally wondering why it continues not to work out. You continually make bad decisions, like whatever it is that's affecting your health, and you're making them. So there has to be some point in time where, when there is a bad outcome, that you stop and you assess the bad outcomes. So I'm tossing that out there because, you can't just say, make a pro con list, make the decision, right? Now you need to assess it, and you need to recognize decision patterns and disrupt the defaults to the bad ones, because there is a pattern.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest thing, because I know for myself, I can see the pattern and it's disrupting it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's knowing, like, I've worked so hard to not be who I was because I don't. But it's when I start seeing myself fall back into a certain pattern, like I have to shake myself
Same. Yep.
and say, listen, we're not doing this.
Of course.
You've worked so hard. Let's not go back into that pattern. Let's stay focused. And sometimes it's those things where even if it's just one baby step in the right direction, so I don't, backslide. It's being able to see the pattern coming and then disrupt that way of thinking and
Right.
move forward.
That's right. And I think that's it. Consciousness. It's that being conscious of the decision. That means to pause and disrupt and to say, how did that decision's outcome serve me? And it's like those books we used to read when we were kids, Choose Your Own Adventure. Make this decision, turn to page 36, right? And at some point you're going to have to say, okay, here's a decision I made. So the point I'm trying to make here is that there is a difference between making a bad decision and being a bad decision maker. We're all going to make bad decisions sometimes, but if you are a person who is simply a bad decision maker, then you are going to have to stop and disrupt those patterns and course correct.
Yeah, you're right. And honestly, I also believe that I would prefer to make a decision, even being a bad decision, over indecision.
That's right. Yeah, I
Because
agree.
sitting and doing nothing, I think, is worse than making.
Well, plus, you're never going to have all the information. There's so many unknown variables when you are faced with decisions in your life, things that you just don't know. You can think that you have considered all of the aspects of this decision, but a lot of times you don't know. I mean, even when you're about to embark upon, a new career, a new job, you don't know what that's going to be like until you get into it. Same with a relationship, but inaction is not an option. So you have to take all of the data and the evidence that you have collected. And sometimes you're going to have to acknowledge that you're missing some data points here. And you have to say, I don't know the unknown. You simply can't know. And you have to make the decision with what you have. And that's also a leadership lesson as well. If you are in a position of leadership, you cannot feasibly wait for all of the information to come in, get all of the advice. There are some times where you just have to commit to a decision and then assess the decision and course correct if it was wrong. And it's
Well,
it's
yeah,
that
but
simple.
I cannot have all the information. But if I make the right decision, if I make a decision for the right reason at the right time, what's best for the organization, then even if I'm still making the right decision. It might not be the perfect one, and then I can course correct once I get more information or doing something else. But as long as you're making a decision for the right reason at the right time, then you're still moving in the right direction.
For sure, for sure. And yeah, the key component to that is just to assess. Just stop a little bit down the road, assess what you've done, and decide if you have to pivot. You can't get stuck. You have to choose, you have to commit, and then you have to adapt, right?
Yeah, and I liked reading in your blog, you put a quote in there from Jodi Picoult that I found really powerful when I read your blog this week, and that was, in the space between yes and no, there is a lifetime. It's the difference between the path you walk and the one you leave behind.
That's good.
And when I read that, I thought, like, make the decision and don't look back.
Yeah. Well, a cool thing is that the universe really does conspire. After you have made the decision, what I have found is the universe conspires in your favor. Yeah, don't look back. Just look forward. And, again, it doesn't mean that you don't assess. There are decisions that are going to affect the rest of your life. I just think a lot of times we ignore intuition. And I have to tell you, everyone says, and I was this person as well, lead with your head, not your heart. And man, I will tell you 99 out of 100 times that I have led with my heart, I've made the right decision.
Yeah, no, I'm a 100% heart person. You are all head. I am
Mm-hmm.
mostly heart, and I
Mm-hmm.
will always follow. And I'll tell you what, when I follow my intuition, it's been very, very rare that I have been wrong.
Yeah, I think that's what really we need to lock into, every single one of us, and seek out advice from your trusted advisors, but feel what is happening inside you when you're getting this advice. And if it's telling you to do the opposite, then you don't have to listen to anyone. You can gather the advice, but make your own decision, what is best for you. And then, I think that's where the universe conspires. So, hey, call to action. Share your coin toss moment with us. Let us know what decision you've made in your life and ones that you've had to reassess and pivot. But I think the most important lesson, disruptors, is listen to yourself, because you know the best thing to do.
Great advice. Also, just real quick, I did have some listeners reach out to me this week, and I noticed that you did print a few new coffee mugs. But what I noticed on the new coffee mugs is I am not on them. There's no
Yeah.
picture. And
Yeah.
I did have some listeners reach out asking for merch. They wanted to be able to buy a Disruptors t-shirt, and they also wanted to buy a Disruptors coffee mug. And when I said to them I'd be happy to arrange that, but I sent them a picture of your new mug, they
Yeah.
were not
Rejected
pleased.
it. They
They don't
rejected
want
it.
it. They want a mug with me on it.
Yeah, wow. It's funny because it was a deliberate decision not to put your face on that mug.
Well, now the listeners have spoke out. So, and I think right now you owe me after the whole exercise thing for the TV, because I didn't need to move, you did, and you forced me to be a part of that. And
Yes.
I'm still angry.
Okay. All right. Listen, thanks for joining us, our fellow disruptors. Just remember that every decision you make is a gateway to 100 more. And sometimes you're going to choose wrong. That's inevitable. But if you reflect honestly and without shame, you will spot the patterns that led you astray. And that's where growth lives. So keep on disrupting, my fellow disruptors. See you next week.
See you next week.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode of the Disruptor's Creed, where we don't do average, and we sure as hell don't do status quo. It's produced by me, Kristen Zeman, because I like to be in control of everything. Musical score is by Ethan Reardon and Jake Zeman, because talent runs deep in this gene pool. If you like what you heard, do that thing. Click subscribe, like, follow, or whatever button keeps this chaos flowing into your ears. And if you didn't like it, you probably need it more than you think. Head over to KristenZeman.com and sign up for my weekly brain droppings, where I dump thoughts, disrupt your thinking, and hopefully light a fire under your ass, all conveniently delivered to your inbox every Monday. You're welcome. Now go out there and cause some good trouble. Until next time, keep on disrupting, my fellow disruptors. Onward and upward.